Morning, Suncoast. Unexplainable grace in every single breath, inescapable love. It's guiding every step. Like gravity, you're pulling me in. The great migration of my heart, it's calling me home. Yeah, it calls me over and over and over again. How could I ever fight? And why would I try? And over and over and over again. Well, I hear your spirit calling. Why would I fight? The great migration of my heart, it's calling me home. Uncontainable life is beating in my chest. Undeniable peace, bringing me to rest. Well, like gravity, you pulled me in. The great migration of my heart, it calls me over and over and over again. How could I ever fight? Why would I try? Over and over and over again. Well, I hear your spirit calling. Why would I fight? Great migration of my heart. The great migration of my heart, it's calling me home. It's calling me home. And through the valley, through the river, you're calling, then I'm coming. Over mountain, through the wastelands, if you're calling, then I'm coming. Come on. Through the valley, yeah. Through the river, if you're calling, then I'm coming. Over mountains, through the wastelands, if you're calling, then I'm coming. Over and over and over again. How could I ever fight? Why would I try? Over and over and over again. I hear your spirit calling. Why would I fight? The great migration of my heart. Great migration of my heart. The great migration of my heart, it's calling me home. It's calling me home. It's calling me home. How's it going, Suncoast? I got some exciting news, and it is amazing to be here again with you this morning. And I am so excited because a week from Wednesday, October 6th, we are doing a music night here, Encore. It's going to be full of music and just a time for us to just get as loud as we can and just shout out and just enjoy our community and the songs that we want to just live by. You know, the songs that we sing up here are songs that we think can transform our lives if we can keep reminding us of the love of God. So come out. It's going to be awesome. Invite your friends, invite your family. We want to pack this place out. It's going to be awesome. Cool. Let's continue.
There is a fountain wrapped in a haze of light, flooded with goodness, rushing with words of life, and they yield to the bone. They're sweet to my soul, and I'm swept away. Rushing through your veins, warm and devoted, tenderness filled with strength, and you yield to the bone, speak life to my soul, and I'm swept away. smoke and the mirrors, a glimmer of light. I know there's a place I belong, where I'll see the fullness of love. Child face to face with my God, lost in your awesome wonder. While I wait, I will not be afraid. Faith will remain all the same. Hope in the things not yet seen, found in the greatest of these. I found love in the moment, exploding in light. At the cross where the curtains were ripped from my eyes, I found heaven in pieces, the glimmer and dust. Broken glass in reflection to a shine like the sun. I know there's a place I belong, where I'll see the fullness of love. Child face to face with my God, lost in your awesome wonder. While I wait, I will not be afraid. Faith will remain all the same. Hope in the things not yet seen, found in the greatest of these. I know that you love me. I know that you love me. Your love never fails.
Let's sing this out this morning.
Your love never fails.
All that matters is love.
Know that you love me. Know that you
Not
love
just in
me.
part, but in all that you are.
Love
Let your
never
love take over.
Love never
All
fails.
said and done, all that matters is love. So let love take over.
Not just in part,
But in all that you are, let your love
take
over.
all said and done.
All that matters is love. So let
Love take over.
not just in part, but in all that you are, let your love
Take over.
when all said and done. All that matters is love. So let love take over. Not just in part, but in all that you are, let your love when all said and done, all that matters is love. So let love take over. Not just in part, but in all that you are, let your love. I know there's a place I belong, where I'll see the fullness of love. A child face to face with my
There's a grace when the heart is under fire. Another way when the walls are closing in. When I look at the space between where I used to be and this reckoning, I know I will never be alone. There was another in the fire, standing next to me. There was another in the waters, holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminded how I've been set free, there is a cross that bears the burden. Another died for me. There is another in the fire. All my dead love for dead beneath the waters. I'm no longer a slave to my sin anymore. Should I fall in the space between what remains of me and this reckoning? Either way, I will bow to the kings of this world. Oh no, I know I will never be alone. There's another in the fire, standing next to me. There is another in the waters, holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminded, the power set me free. There is a grave that holds no body, the power lives in me. There is another in the fire. Whoa, 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 I can see the light in the darkness as the darkness bows to end. I can hear the roar in the heavens as the space between which then I can feel the ground shake between us as the prison walls cave in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us. There is no other name but the name that is Jesus. He who was and still is and will be through it all. So come what may in the space between all the things unseen and this reckoning. And I know I will never be alone. And I know I will never be alone. Be another in the fire, standing next to me. Be another in the waters, holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminded, how good you've been to joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. I count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. I count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be.
Give up a moment, take time just to own it. Let go of the fine line, your balance is forward. In the depth of a canyon, a voice is an ocean. The paths are so heavy, your arms are still open. Your arms are still open. Something so tightly, I want it to be you. Just open up your arms and hold. Just open up your arms and just open up your arms and hold. Start to carry you out to the open. Let my love be the lifeline as I pull the rope in. Let your love be contagious and shine in the darkness. Will you be the voice and I'll be the dry land? If I'm gonna hold on to something so tightly, I want it to be you. Just open up your arms and hold. Just open up your arms and hold. Just open up your arms and hold. Just open up your arms and open up your arms and guys so much for singing out with us. Enjoy the rest of the service.
The hero stands at the threshold. A dimly lit widow's temple, where two worshipers bow low to their gods, to their stomachs. He enters to collect the tithe for his own god. The worshipers give all, knowing that to do so may seal their doom. Can the faith of idolaters see the devourer become the source? Epic.
It's good to see you guys today. Let me tell you some of the things that have been happening at Suncoast. You know, we've been doing a lot of community things. We're still giving cars away, which is a wonderful thing. But yesterday, probably 25 guys from Suncoast gathered and changed the oil, washed about 28 different cars. That's a lot of things. But here's the thing. We do that, but we do it in your name. So it's not just the guys who are doing it, but they're doing it as a Suncoast community group. But so it's my joy to stand before you today. Lots of good things are happening. We're in the series Epic. And I was able to teach you last week about this, but today I want to introduce you to someone who's very important to me. For months and months, I've been looking for someone who could come in and help Brett and me with our teaching team. So the three of us is a great number, and we've met him before. You're going to meet him again today. It's his first opportunity to stand before you and teach us today in this series. So it's Dr. Troy Doucet. You can call him Dr. Doucet. You can call him Troy. Just don't call him Larry. Fair enough? Anyways, Troy, it's all yours. I just want to introduce. It's my community. You'll love them.
Awesome. Thank you. Good morning, Suncoast. As Dr. Bauckham said, my name's Troy, and it is a pleasure for me to be here. So whether you're live in the flesh in person or if you're watching us online, thanks for being here. We're in the midst of a new teaching series called Epic. And we're diving deep into the life of this Old Testament prophet named Elijah. And we're going to look at this story and basically try to take some truth nuggets from it to see how we can apply these truths from Elijah's life into our day and age some 3,000 years after this epic story takes place. So last week, Pastor Larry did most of the heavy lifting intellectually and historically, situating and framing Elijah in his cultural and historical context. But today we're going to look at some different ideas from this story and again, pull out some points that I think will be really important to us. So I have this philosophy that I live by, and you heard me speak about it a couple of weeks ago. I say this all the time, and I do my best to try to live by it. I say, if you want what you've always had, keep doing what you've always done. Stay in maintenance mode, right? But if you want something that you've never had, you will have to do something you've never done. You're going to have to stretch yourself beyond your own beliefs of your own limitations and trust God to take you places that you never thought you'd go before. For me, it's Sarasota, Florida, right? But this goes to any point or aspect of our life. Think of it like physically. If you want to change the way your health is, you may have to do things you've never done before, right? I love to go to the gym and I like lifting heavy things, and then I jump on a treadmill or a Stairmaster. I sit in a sauna for ungodly amounts of time and sweat profusely, and that's typically when I try to give my wife like this big hug, which she enthusiastically rejects like every time, right? But if we want to talk about it relationally, maybe you've been in a relationship with your significant other or your spouse for years, and you do the same old thing every day. You clock in at work, you come back and you put on the news, and then you go to bed. But if you want to try to recapture or rekindle this romance, you're going to have to start thinking about new things to do to reignite that fire. Now, I'm going to leave it up to you and your own imaginations as to what you do for that, because that's none of my business, right? But maybe you want to elevate your mental or rational faculties. That means you may have to dedicate more time to reading, listening to podcasts or TED Talks. The idea here is, I think God is placing us in positions to stretch ourselves beyond our own beliefs of our limitations. And this is what's going to happen in this epic story today with Elijah. You know, a few years ago, I was completing my PhD at the University of Texas, and I wrote this paper. I'm not going to bore you with the title, but it was basically around interpreting old ancient text. And one of my professors was like, hey, Troy, this is a pretty boss paper, man. Like, you really should think about submitting it to a couple of conferences and presenting your work. And he goes, in fact, there's one coming up at the University of Oxford in England. And I was like, wait, what? I'm an old country boy from Opelousas, Louisiana. I ain't got no business submitting any academic work to the oldest speaking university in the English world, right? Much less the one where Harry Potter was filmed at, you know? But yet, he pushed me, he challenged me. I submitted this paper to this very prestigious conference on religion and philosophy. 3 weeks later, I got an acceptance letter saying, hey, you are one of 12 lecturers at this conference out of hundreds of people who applied to present. And I'm not trying to be braggadocious or, proud in a vain sort of way, but I am saying this, is that when we step out to do something that we've never done before, we will experience things that we've never experienced before in all aspects of our life. So let me ask you this. See, I'm not an extreme fitness guy. I'm not an ivory tower intellectual, but I do know this. The more extreme my fitness regimen is, the more extreme my results will be. And my question for us today, Suncoast, is how can we increase our spiritual faith? How can we trust God to have extreme faith for our church, for our community? You know, faith is often defined as this: believing what you cannot see. And while that may be true, today I want to suggest to us that it's not faith, but faithfulness as being the key in your life to go beyond your own self-imposed limitations. You have the capacity, the ability to be great with God on your side. I love what that song that Chase sang earlier. Why even fight? Because I know that the God of the universe has got my back. And if I trust him and I step out to experience and do something I've never done before, I will have things that I've never had before. That's a truth you can hold on to. The Greek philosopher Aristotle said this once. He said, we become that which we consistently do over time. If you want to be brave, you're not born brave. According to Aristotle's philosophy, you become brave by doing brave things over and over again. You become a coward by doing what? Cowardly things. You want to be more spiritual? Do more spiritual things. If you want to be more Christ-like, then do more things that have a Jesus-ness to them. That's our challenge. But this week we're going to look at Elijah, this Old Testament prophet who was called to the northern kingdom of Israel. And during Elijah's time, there was a king named Ahab who began shifting his culture through his leadership and influence away from the worship of the true God Yahweh to the worship of Baal, or Baal if you want to call him that. And as Pastor Larry said last week, Baal worship was primarily focused on fertility and procreation. But I want to expand that definition because historians and archaeologists tell us that Baal was literally the god over nature. And nature had become to be seen as the primary source of all that humans needed in their life. But you know, a prophet was an important person because essentially the word prophet, let me kind of put on my professor hat a little bit here. The word prophet comes from two words. The first word is the prefix pro, which means before. And then the last word is phasis, which means to speak. So a prophet was merely someone who spoke before something happened. Does that make sense? And in this case, God sends Elijah to Ahab to forewarn him about an impending drought that's going to take place. But there are prophets all over the world, even in your life right now, that you may not feel are sent by God. But think about your medical doctor. He could forewarn you about what? if you don't change your diet or eating habits, this may happen. A counselor may be in your life saying, hey, if you don't treat your spouse better, this may happen. A prophet is not necessarily just a man or a woman of God. It's someone who has the capacity to see things that are going to happen if things don't change. And Elijah is sent to Ahab because of his unfaithfulness. The worship of nature as the source of all of our needs in the world. But yet, I want to make a claim today that there is really only one source for all of our needs in the universe, and that's God. Everything else becomes a resource. And Elijah tells Ahab, look, dude, if you don't change, God is going to remove his presence and his provision from this land, and it's gonna be dry, it's gonna be barren. And it's not just gonna affect the people underneath you, it's going to affect you, the king, as well. You know, physical drought, as we see throughout history, is a time where there's no rain, it's dry, the land is barren, it doesn't produce any resources for our needs. But I want you to think about spiritual drought in your own life. This feeling of being disconnected from God. How many of you guys ever had that feeling before where you felt like God was just so far away? Me too. And I want to read this verse together because Elijah's going to encounter this widow who is experiencing a drought in her life that is essentially not her fault. She is a casualty of Ahab's unfaithfulness and why this drought is brought on this land. So let's read this verse. Here's what it says from the book of Kings. Now Elijah, the Tishbite from Tishbe in Gilead, said to King Ahab, as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, whom I serve, there will neither be dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah, leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Kerith ravine, east of the Jordan. There you will drink from the brook, and I have directed ravens to supply you with food there. So he did as the Lord told him. He went to the Kerith ravine, east of Jordan, stayed there, and the ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening. That's a sandwich, by the way, you know. And he drank from the brook as well. Sometime later, the brook dried up because there had not been any rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him again and said, go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow to supply you with food. So he went, and when he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, would you bring me a little water in a jar so that I may have a drink? And as she was going to get it, he called and said, please also bring me a piece of bread. Sometime later, the brook dried up because there had been, am I going backwards or forward? There we go, here we go. Sorry guys. As surely as the Lord your God lives, look at what the widow tells Elijah here. He comes in the name of the Lord, but she says, as surely as your God lives, not my God. My God has disconnected from me in some way because we're in a drought. I don't have any bread. I only have a handful of flour in a jar and a little bit of oil. And I'm gathering sticks so that me and my son can make bread and eat it before we die. And Elijah said to her, don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me, and then make some for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel says, the jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day of the Lord sends rain on the land. So she went and did as Elijah told her, and there was food every day for Elijah, the woman, and her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. See, there's something happening in this story that I think we have to pick up. Elijah is beginning to see that there is really only one ultimate source in our life, and that is the God of the universe, and everything else around him is a potential provision or resource that God can use. So let me say this to you. How does this translate to us? Your job is not the source. It's a resource. Your significant other or your spouse is not the source of your happiness. It's a resource that God can use. Your bank account, your 401k, your family is not the source. It is merely a resource that God can use as a mechanism. And when we begin to shift our minds to see God as the source of our life, we open ourselves up to God deploying and using whatever resource He feels necessary to use to provide divinely in our life. In Elijah's case, he's at the ravine and ravens bring him food. Now that may not mean anything to you, but if you read the book of Deuteronomy, ravens were labeled as an unclean animal to be avoided at all costs by the Jews. Which begs the question, who actually made that law to begin with, man or God? But that's going to be a conversation for another time. For some of you, what this means is that God, when you see Him as the ultimate source for your life, can use any resource He chooses to bless you, even ones that you've been taught your entire life to avoid or disagree with. Let me say this, a Muslim can be a resource to speak truth to a Christian. A Republican can be a resource to a Democrat. And a poor person who has nothing to offer can be a resource to a person who is very wealthy. This leads me to my first point I want to talk about this morning is this. Seeing God as the source and not merely a resource opens up our life for divine provision. I'll say it again. Seeing God as the source and not merely another resource opens up our life to divine provision. But yet, even in the midst of Elijah serving God, his brook went dry. The ravine went dry even in his life as he is faithfully serving and trusting God. Elijah's name literally means Yahweh is my God. But yet, his brook went dry. So you can't believe the old prosperity gospel that if you're in the will of God or you're serving God faithfully, that everything's gonna be hunky-dory and all right. Elijah was in God's will, serving Him as a messenger prophet, and yet his brook still went dry. So what do you do when you're experiencing faithfulness? You're coming to church every Sunday, you're faithfully giving and serving the community, and then all of a sudden, darkness encroaches upon your life and drought happens in the midst of your serving faithfully. Maybe you get news that you have some sort of untreatable disease like cancer, you or your loved one. Maybe you find out a relationship that you've been in is ending and your spouse or significant other files for divorce and wants custody of the kids. Maybe you're a casualty of the economy and its downturn and your company had to downsize because of COVID. Darkness seems to be encroaching even as you feel you're doing all you can to trust God. What does Elijah do? How is he a model for us to persist in our faith even when we're almost losing it? You know what he does in the verse? He stops and he listens for the source of his provision, because he knew that regardless of his situation, it might be getting dark, but I trust the light of the world. My resource might be limited, but the source of it is absolutely limitless. I know my source will eventually provide a new resource for me. And you got to get this when you feel like disconnected from God or there's a drought or there's darkness happening. Never mistake the presence of darkness as the absence of God in your life. You have to get that. God is always already there. His love for you is immeasurable. It's unfathomable. It's incomprehensible. It is limitless to our limited minds. God wins every time. So Elijah listens to the word from his source and he says, leave this ravine, it's dry. I'm gonna provide a new resource for you. A widow who's on the verge of dying of starvation because of this drought. He meets her and immediately he says, hey lady, can you get me some water and make me some bread? Even though I know that's all you have left. And look at her response. She goes, as surely as your God lives, I don't have anything to offer. There is nothing of benefit that I can contribute to you, man of God. And you know what? Sometimes in our life, that's exactly what God needs from us to become a resource for others when we feel we don't have anything to provide. Sometimes that's exactly what God needs from you. Nothing. Nothing. God is more interested in your availability than your ability. And if you believe that you have enough money to please God, that if you have to somehow pray more, give more, attend church more, and somehow you rise to the social status of God's economy, you've missed the point. God uses a poor widow as a provision for Elijah. But you can see her faith dwindling in her conversation. I have nothing to offer. The widow had some good excuses not to be used by God, right? I'm out of food. I'm poor. I'm starving. So's my son. I'm a widow. What's your excuse to not be used by God? Here are some I've heard before. I'm divorced. I'm unemployed. I'm a person with a disability. I'm not even sure what I actually believe about God anymore. I'm questioning my own sexuality. And let me say this is point 2 that you got to get today. Allowing God to use you as a provision for others could be the start of a revision of how you come to see yourself made in the image of God. Even in the midst of your own seeming drought, God can and will use you as a provision for others. And it doesn't have to be extravagant or exuberant. Sometimes people need a high five. Sometimes people just need to be like, what's up? Good to see you. Sometimes you need to let the person who has less groceries in line than you go ahead of you. That can make all the difference in the world for someone experiencing the love and provision of God. You might be depending on others for help, yet you still can be a help to others. No one might have your best interest at heart right now, but that should not be reason enough for you to lose heart. Think deeply about it. She was in this position through no fault of her own. She was a casualty of Ahab's unfaithfulness. Ahab was a king who was responsible to keep God's ways with his people, yet he did a poor job. He began to worship the resource and not the source, and drought came. You know, I could hear Elijah speaking to Ahab, asking him like the Dr. Phil question, right? Hey, yo, Ahab, how's that whole worshiping the source working? How's that whole worshiping the resource working for you without the source providing for it? And the truth is this of this story: God sends Elijah unclean animals to provide, a poor widow to provide. And the question we have to ask is, who's serving whom? He's sending Elijah to a poor widow to take care of him. And he is taking care of her too at the same time. They both needed food. They both depended on God. But look how the provision came for this poor dying widow and her son. She didn't win the lottery. She didn't get $1 million. The provision was just enough for what? That day. And then the provision was enough for the next day. Just enough to sustain them. Yet in our world, especially in westernized Christianity, this is a foreign concept to us. We want a bank account with plenty of resource so that if a day of drought comes, we don't have to worry. Financial planners work their tail off to make sure that we'll retire to live through any drought. In this story, God is the source, but yet oftentimes we only view God as a resource, this cosmic Santa Claus that I pray to for things to happen in my life, for provision. And as long as I pray enough, if I show up to church enough, if I'm kind enough, if I meet some ubiquitous standard, then this God will provide for me. That's not how it works. The God of the universe cares about all of his creation to the point of using prophets, widows, and unclean animals as a source of divine provision for us. And this leads me to my last point today. God's provision in our life will often come when we least expect it, and even more so when we least deserve it. A couple of years ago, I was a youth minister in Dallas, Texas. And 2 young boys were brothers in my group. They were named Wesley and Michael. Wesley was like a 10th grader. Michael was like in 8th grade. They were a couple of years apart. And their dad, Mark, was a very wealthy man. He owned a bunch of businesses, multi-millionaire. I always complimented his new BMWs that he would often drive up to the church in. And one day we were signing up for a mission trip to New Orleans, Louisiana. This is right on the heels after Katrina hit and just devastated my home, because I'm from Louisiana. And I thought it'd be great if we can go and help rebuild homes. And so kids are signing up. We're building excitement and enthusiasm. And Mark is there. His 2 sons are signed up. And one day after church, I approached Mark and I said, "Hey, yo, Mark, man, I don't know if I'm hearing from God, but I just feel prompted in my spirit that you should come with us on this mission trip, dude." And of course, Mark, being the very important businessman, important guy in our community and city, is like, "Well, Troy, there's no way. There's no way I could do that. I'm a very busy man. I'm running multiple businesses. I have time. You know, it's it's not something that I can afford." He goes, "But do you want me to like sponsor some kids? Like, what do you want me?" He pulls out his checkbook. True story. He pulls out his checkbook and he writes me a check right there for $20,000. And he goes, "Let me just pay for the whole mission trip, man. You guys go and rock it for Jesus." That was easy for him. It was easy for him to write that big old check, because that's like me loaning you $25, right? It hurts a little bit, but it's all good. And I was like, "No, Mark, I think you really need to think about this." There's no way I could do it, Troy, sorry. But I'm glad Wesley and Michael are going. Cool. The next day, Monday, my phone rings. It's Mark. I'm like, "Hey, bro, what's up?" And he's like, "You son of a gun." He said, "I couldn't even sleep last night." I was like, "What's up?" And he's like, "Let me take you to lunch." So we go to lunch at a place called Cafe Express in Plano, Texas. And Mark is like, "All right, dude, I'm in." Boom, let's go. Can I keep the check? You know? And so Mark comes, and he is the supervisor of this work site where we're rebuilding this home for this 80-year-old woman named Miss Guillory. She was living in a FEMA trailer. House was just destroyed. And for 4 days, man, we're busting our butts, sweating, hanging sheetrock, taping and bedding. And I remember that Thursday night came and we had to say our goodbyes, and man, Mark was just hugging her. Tears were flowing. And we get back, and I just see the look on this businessman who's typically wearing suits. He's just covered in dust, stinky, sweaty, and he's just like, "This was awesome." We get back, and that Sunday when we returned to church, we knew we had a week to prepare because we were going to give our testimonies. Mark calls me as we're preparing to give our testimonies in front of the church about what God did on that trip. He says, "Hey, bro, I got a crazy idea." I was like, "What you got?" He's like, "I want to fly Miss Guillory in and not tell anybody and just bring her out." Boom. I fly to New Orleans. I fly Miss Guillory home to Dallas. We put her in the Hilton. We wine her and dine her, keep it a secret. She's in the green room, and all of our students are sharing what God did in their life. And then at the end, I said, "You know, we got one more person that we want to bring out." And Miss Guillory walks out of the green room. 100 students rush the stage to hug and embrace this woman who for a week they served relentlessly, impassioned to say, "We are going to try to make it right." And here's Mark sitting in the front row, kind of where you are, Charles, tears rolling down his face going, "God wins." I did something I never thought I could do, give my time away to go serve. And the question is, I think, and this is what Ms. Guillory says, we give her the microphone, and she looks dead at Mark. And she said, "You done for me what I couldn't do for myself." This happens in your life when you begin to see God as the source and everything else as a potential resource used by God. So let's trust God today. Let's trust God with all of our heart to step out in great faith, to see what we can do in this community of Sarasota. Stand with me. Let me pray for you today. Let's pray. God, the source of all of our needs in the universe. God, let us not be so closed-minded to refuse accepting resources that you provide, are declining to be used as a resource even in the midst of our own drought. God, open us up to the possibility of all that you have for us. There is greatness within us all because you are in us all. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen. Thank you, guys. I'll see you.